عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. طلابي الأعزاء، طلاب الفرقة الثالثة بكلية العلاج الطبيعي، أهلا بحضراتكم جميعا. بأمر الله هنكمل مع بعض النهاردة ال Scientific Thinking course. In the last session we recognized about some points such as we take introduction to thinking, and we recognized about the nature of thinking, some definition of thinking, and in the last we take some building blocks for thinking process or some elements it is necessary to think scientific process. In this session we will recognize some important such as two parts. We will differentiate between good thinker and poor thinker. The second part we will define some types of thinking. Today we will take two parts. The part 1, the differentiate between good thinker and poor thinker. The part 2, we will recognize about some types of thinking. Let's start with part 1. What is the difference between good thinker and poor thinker? When can I say this person is a good thinker? And when can I say this person is poor thinker? We don't say bad thinker. We say poor thinker. We can differentiate between good thinker and poor thinker with 4 aspects, such as general traits, goals, possibilities, and evidence. We will differentiate between good and poor thinker in four aspects: traits, general traits, evidence, possibilities, goals. Let's start with general traits. If we speak about good thinker, we found some general traits, such as good thinker welcomes with problematic situation and is tolerant of ambiguity. Again, good thinker welcomes with problematic situations and is tolerant of ambiguity. Number 2, we can say good thinker is self-critical. Good thinker is self-critical and search for alternative possibilities and goals. Good thinker is self-critical and looks for alternative possibilities and goals. Good thinker also seeks evidence on both of sides. Till now, we know good thinker is: number 1, welcomes with problematic situations. Number 2, good thinker is tolerant of ambiguity. Number 3, good thinker is self-critical. Number 4, good thinker is searches for alternative possibilities and goals. Also, seek evidence on both sides. We can also say good thinker is reflective and deliberative. Searches when appropriate. We also found that good thinker believes the value of rationality. Good thinker believes the value of rationality, and this thinking can be effective. All of these traits of good thinker. Till now, we found that good thinker is welcomes with problematic situation. Good thinker is tolerant of ambiguity. Good thinker is self-critical. Good thinker searches for alternative possibilities and goals. Also, good thinker is reflective. Good thinker is deliberative. Search for alternative when appropriate. Good thinker believes with the value of rationality, and thinking can be effective. An opposite of that, when we speak about the poor thinker. Poor thinker also have some general traits, such as poor thinker is not self-critical. Poor thinker is not self-critical. Poor thinker always search for certainty. Again, poor thinker isn't self-critical. Poor thinker search for certainty or trust, and is intolerant of ambiguity. Until now, we say poor thinks. Poor thinker has some general traits, such as poor thinker isn't self-critical. Poor thinker search always for certainty or trust. Poor thinker is intolerant of ambiguity. Also, poor thinker is satisfied with first attempts. Also, we can say that poor thinking is impulsive. Poor thinking is impulsive. Gives up prematurely, and is over-controlled, overconfident of the correctness of the initial idea. Again, poor thinker is impulsive, gives up prematurely, and is overconfident with the correctness of initial ideas. We also found that the poor thinking overvalues of what? Denigrate rationality, and believe thinking will not be effective or will not be help him. Until now, we differentiate between good and poor thinker. When we speak about good thinker, we found some traits such as welcomes with problematic situation, self-confidence, look for alternative possibilities and goals, effective, deliberative, search when appropriate, believe the value of rationality, and thinking can be effective. An opposite of that, when we speak about poor thinking, we found some general traits, such as poor thinker is search for certainty, and is not tolerant of ambiguity. Also, poor thinker is impulsive, not self-critical, and is satisfied with first attempts. We found also poor thinker is overconfident of the correctness of intentional ideas. We can also differentiate between good and poor thinker as goals. Each of them has goals. But what is the difference between goals of good thinker and goals of poor thinker? Goals of good thinker is deliberative in discovering goals. Again, deliberative in discovering goals, and revise goals when necessary, and revise goals when necessary. Again, good thinker have goals, as is deliberative in discovering goals. Number 2, devise goals when necessary. An opposite of that, when we speak about poor thinker, also have a goals, but poor thinker is impulsive in discovering or choose goals. Again, poor thinking is impulsive in choosing goals, and doesn't revise goal. When we differentiate between good and poor thinker, all of them has goals, but good thinker is deliberative in choosing goals and in discovering goals. Also, good thinker revise goals when necessary. But poor thinker is impulsive in discovering goals. Impulsive in discovering goals and doesn't revise goals. We also can differentiate between good thinker and poor thinker in another aspect, such as possibilities. How can the good thinker in possibility and how can poor thinker? Possibilities in good thinker is open to multiple representation, multiple possibilities. Again, good thinker is open to multiple possibilities and consider alternative. When we go to speak about good thinker, we found good thinker is open to multiple possibilities and consider alternative. Also, good thinker is deliberative in analysis possibilities. Again, good thinker has 2 points. Number 1 is open to multiple possibilities and consider alternative. Number 2, good thinker is deliberative in analysis possibilities. In opposite of that, we found poor thinker. Poor thinker prefer to deal with limited possibilities. Poor thinker prefers to deal with limited possibilities, doesn't seek alternatives. Okay, we also found poor thinker is impulsive in choosing possibilities. This in possibilities. All of them has possibilities. Good thinker is open to multiple possibilities and considered alternative. Also, good thinker is deliberative in analysis possibilities. In the opposite, in poor thinking prefer to deal with limited possibilities and doesn't seek to alternative. Also, poor thinker is impulsive in choosing possibilities. After we differentiate between good and poor thinker in general traits, in goals and possibilities, we can differentiate between good and poor thinker in evidence. How? Good thinker use evidence that challenge favorite possibilities. Good thinker prefers to use evidence that challenge favorite possibilities. Also, good thinker searches for evidence against possibilities that are strong or in favor of those that was or are weak. Again, when we speak about good thinker in evidence, good thinker use evidence that challenges favorite possibilities. Also, good thinker searches for evidence against possibilities that are strong or in favor of those that are weak. In opposite of that, we found the poor thinker in evidence. Ignore evidence. Poor thinker ignores evidence that challenge favorite possibilities. Also, we found a poor thinker searches for evidences that favor strong possibilities. When we differentiate between good and poor thinker in evidence, we found that good thinker use evidence that challenge favorite possibilities and also research for evidence against possibilities that are strong or in favor of that are weak. In opposite of that, in poor thinker. Poor thinker ignore evidence that challenge favorite possibilities. Also, poor thinker searches only for evidence that favor strong possibilities. Now we differentiate between good and poor thinker. The second part of this session, we will recognize about some types of thinking. We will recognize about some types of thinking. We will find many types of thinking, such as number one, perceptual or concrete thinking. Number type of thinking, perceptual or concrete thinking. This type of thinking is the simplest form of thinking. This type of thinking is the simplest form of thinking. The base of this type of thinking is perception. Again, we found many types of thinking. The first one, perceptual or concrete thinking. Perceptual or concrete thinking. This type of thinking is simplest form of thinking. The base of these types is perception, that is meaning interpretation of sensation according to one's experience. That is meaning interpretation of sensation of or according to one's experience. It also can called concrete thinking. Why we called it concrete thinking? Because this type of thinking is carried out on the perception of actual objects or concrete objects or events or situations. Now we recognize the first type of thinking. The first type of thinking, perceptual and concrete thinking. Perceptual and concrete thinking is the simplest form of the simplest form of this type of thinking. The base of this type of thinking is perception, that is meaning interpretation of sensation according to one's experiences. We can also say concrete thinking. It also called concrete thinking. Why? Because this type of thinking is carried out the perception of actual or concrete events or objects. After we recognize about the first type of thinking, which is called perception and concrete thinking, we will go to the second type of thinking. The second type of thinking is conceptual or abstract thinking. Conceptual or abstract thinking. The second type, conceptual and abstract thinking. In this type of thinking, one make use of concepts, the generalized objects, and language. Again, the second type of thinking is abstract thinking or conceptual thinking. At conceptual thinking or abstract thinking, one makes use of concepts and generalized objects and language. It is regarded as being superior to perceptual thinking. Why? Because this type of thinking economize efforts in understand or efforts in problem solving. Again, the second type of thinking is abstract thinking or conceptual thinking. Abstract thinking or conceptual thinking, these types makes use of concepts, generalized objects, and language. This types is regarded as being superior to the perceptual thinking. Why? Because this type of thinking economizes efforts, our efforts in problem solving and understanding. Now we differentiate between the two types of thinking, perceptual thinking and conceptual thinking. Now we will go to the third type of thinking. The third type of thinking is reflective thinking. The third type of thinking is reflective thinking. In this type of thinking, which is called reflective thinking, one aims to solve complex problems. In types of thinking, reflective thinking, one aims in or aims to solving complex problems. Thus is required reorganization of all relevant experiences to a situation or removing abstracts. Again, reflective thinking aims in solving complex problems. Solve complex problems. Thus is required reorganization of all relevant experiences to a situation or remove any obstacles instead of relating with that experiences of idea. Again, when we recognize about the reflective thinking in these types once aims to solve complex problems, some complex problems. Thus is required reorganization of all relevant experience to a situation or removing any obstacles instead of relating with that experiences or ideas. This type of thinking in this type an insightful cognitive approach has insightful cognitive approach in reflective thinking as a mental activity here doesn't involve the mechanical trial and error type of effort. Again, this is an insight mental process or an insight cognitive approach in the reflective thinking. As the mental activity here doesn't involve the mechanical trial and error type of efforts. Finally, in this thinking or in reflective thinking process took all the relevant facts arranged in a logical order into an account in order to arrive at a solution of this problem. Again, in reflective thinking process take all the relevant factors arranged in logical order into an account. Why? In order to arrive at a solution of these problems. Now we recognize three types of thinking: perceptual and concrete thinking. After that we recognize about abstract thinking. After that we recognize about reflective thinking. The fourth type of thinking we will recognize about creative thinking. This type of thinking is associated with one's ability. Again, in the creative thinking or this type of thinking is associated with one's ability to create or construct. Construct what? Construct something new, something unusual, something novel. When we speak about the creative thinking is associated with one's ability to create or construct something new, something novel, something unusual. It looks for new relationships or new associations. Again, creative thinking looks for new relationships or new associations. To what? To describe and interpret. To describe and interpret. Interpret the nature of something, the nature of thinking, the nature of events and situations. Again, in creative thinking or this type of thinking is associated with one's ability to create or construct something new, something unusual, something novel. It looks for new relationships or new associations. New association or new relationship to describe or to interpret the nature of objects, nature of events and situations. Here, the individual himself is usually formulate the evidences and tools. Persons who are creative thinker. This individual himself usually formulate the evidences and tools for its solutions. For example, scientists and artists. Finally, we found that Skinner is the famous psychologist, said what? Said creative thinking means that the prediction of or inferences of the individual are new, original, and unusual. The creative thinker is one who experiences new idea and make new observation, make new prediction, and you make new inferences. Again, when we speak about creative thinking, we speak about types of thinking is associated with one's ability to create or construct something new, something novel, something unusual. It looks for new relationship, new association to describe and interpret something, the nature of something, the nature of thinking, of events and situations. Creative thinker usually formulate the evidences and its tools for its solutions. For example, scientists and artists. Okay? Finally, the creative thinker is one who can or who express new ideas, new prediction, new conclusion, new observation, and so on. After we recognize creative thinking, now we can determine characteristic of creative thinking. Now we will define characteristic of creative thinking. Creative thinking in all its shape and forms is absolutely an internal mental process. Again, creative thinking in all its shapes and forms is absolutely an internal mental process. And should be considered as an important component of one's cognitive behavior. Number 2, everyone of us is capable of using creative thinking, capable of using or create new things, novel things, unusual things, and so on. Number 3, creative thinking result in the production of something new or something novel or something unusual, including a new form of rearrangement of old elements. Again, creative thinking results results in the production of something new, something unusual, something novel. This something new or novel or unusual including a new rearrangement of old elements. Number 4, creative thinking in all its dimension. Creative thinking in all its dimension involve divergent thinking instead of the routine and the final types of convergent thinking. The mind must have complete freedom to wander around to create a new idea. When we speak about the creative thinking, the mind must have complete freedom. Why complete freedom? To wander around a new solution, a new idea, novel idea, and unusual idea. This characteristic of creative thinking. Creative thinking in all its shapes and forms is absolutely an internal mental process and should be considered as an important component in our cognitive behavior. Every one of us can be creative thinking. Every one of us can produce something new, something novel, something unusual. Number 3, creative thinking results in the production of something novel, something new, including a new rearrangement of old elements. Number 4, creative thinking in all its dimensions involve divergent thinking. Instead of routine form or routine and final types of convergent thinking. Finally, the mind in the creative thinking must have complete freedom to wander around the new ideas, the novel ideas. After we recognize about the creative thinking and the creative thinker, we will go to the critical thinking. Critical thinking, these types of thinking that helps a person to stepping aside what? Stepping aside from his personal beliefs and opinion to sort out the trust, and discover the trust, even at the expense of his basic belief system. Again, when we recognize about the critical thinking, it is a type of thinking that helps us or helps a person in stepping aside from what? Aside from his own personal beliefs, or opinions, to sort out the faith and trust, and discovering the trust, even at the expense of our beliefs or basic belief system. We also, in critical thinking, here one resorts to set higher cognitive abilities and skills. In this type of thinking, one resorts to higher cognitive abilities and skills for the proper interpretation, analysis, evaluation, and inference, as well as explanation of the gathered or communicated information, resulting in a proposal and self-regulatory judgment. Now we speak about the critical thinking. After we recognize a critical thinking, the final types we will take about or recognize, will recognize non-directed or associative thinking. Non-directed or associative thinking. There are times when we find ourselves engaged in a unique type of thinking. There are times when we find ourselves engaged in what? A unique type of thinking, which is non-directed or without goal, without any goal. It is reflected through dreaming, and other free-flowing, under control activities. Again, these types of thinking, non-directing thinking or associative thinking. In these types, we sometimes find ourselves engaged in a unique type of thinking. This type of thinking which is non-directed and without goal. Non-directed and without goal. This type is reflective from what? Reflective through dreaming. Reflective through dreaming and other free-flowing uncontrolled activities. In psychology, these forms of thinking are determined as associative thinking or non-directed thinking. Daydreaming, fantasy are all fall in the category of withdrawal behavior that helps us or helps an individual to escape from what? Escape from the demand of real world by making his thinking face non-directed and floating. This is the non-directed or associative thinking. In this session, we speak about two parts. The first part is the differentiate between good thinker and poor thinker. In the second part, we take about or recognize about some types of thinking. In the next session, we will recognize about the first one, thinking types, scientific thinking. We will define the scientific thinking and recognize about skills in scientific thinking. Thank you for your times and go in another session إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
تمام كده يا دكتور؟
تمام.